It's not that she stopped caring overnight. It's that she found someone who made her forget to care about you. And before she vanished, she told you everything in 5 perfectly rehearsed lies. You probably didn't notice because they all sound so innocent. I'm not really a texter. I need space. I'm just so busy right now. But every word was a breadcrumb, and if you followed them, you'd find they were leading to someone else. Today, we're going to break down these lies women sometimes tell when their interest fades and, often, when they're exploring a connection with someone new. We'll explore how they sound, what they really mean, and the moment you should stop believing them. Because once you see the pattern, her silence won't hurt anymore. It'll just make sense. We've all heard them, or maybe we've even used them ourselves. Phrases like, "I'm really busy," "My phone died," "I'm not ready for anything serious." On the surface, they all sound perfectly reasonable. They sound like legitimate explanations for why a partner might seem a little distant or less available. But when you look deeper, especially when you already sense a change in the relationship's temperature, these statements often reveal themselves to be something else entirely. They aren't just excuses. They're psychological tells, subtle indicators of shifting priorities and a growing emotional detachment. The immediate result of hearing these phrases, of course, is confusion. It creates this fog of uncertainty. If you take them at face value, you can end up clinging to false hope, pouring your energy into a connection that's already fading out. You're left in this kind of emotional limbo, constantly trying to decode what's really going on. Are they genuinely busy, or are they just not that into you anymore? The real meaning gets deliberately obscured. You know, this pattern of indirect communication, it's deeply human. It's rooted in our desire to avoid direct conflict, to not cause pain. It's often a misplaced attempt to soften the blow of rejection, or sometimes to keep options open without having to face an uncomfortable truth. But this avoidance, which might feel compassionate in the moment, it ultimately creates more emotional distress. It just prolongs the inevitable, leaving the other person grappling with ambiguity instead of the clarity they deserve. So, to truly understand these verbal smokescreens, we first need to lay a foundation. We need to explore the core psychological principles that actually drive emotional disengagement in relationships. When a person's emotional investment in a relationship starts to shift, their communication and their behavior, well, they almost always follow suit in very predictable ways. There are a few key principles at play here. The first is behavior over words. This just means that actions, consistent patterns of behavior, are a far more reliable indicator of someone's true feelings than their spoken reassurances. The second is energy and bandwidth. You have to think of emotional availability not just as time, but as energy. When interest is high, people find or make time. When it's low, even small efforts start to feel like a burden. Then there's the brain chemistry of it all, dopamine and attraction. When interest shifts to someone new, the brain literally begins to rewire itself to seek that dopamine hit from the new source, which naturally leads to less engagement with the previous partner. Finally, you have things like avoidant detachment, where someone frames their withdrawal as self-care to avoid guilt, and control dynamics, where rationing attention becomes a tool to shift power in the relationship. So these principles, they really highlight that emotional disengagement is rarely a sudden, loud declaration. It's a gradual, subtle process, and spoken words can become a very convenient smokescreen for what's really happening. The real message isn't in what's being said, but in that underlying shift of emotional energy and priority. The person is creating distance, whether they know it or not, to manage their own discomfort or to free up bandwidth to pursue new interests. And the long-term danger of ignoring these fundamental psychological shifts. It's a cycle of prolonged emotional distress and, frankly, self-deception. By choosing to believe the words over the actions, or by failing to recognize that redirection of emotional energy, you risk becoming what's known as a placeholder. This slow erosion of self-respect is damaging because you inadvertently teach your partner that your value is negotiable, that you're willing to accept breadcrumbs of attention. And that sets a dangerous precedent for the future. With these foundational principles in mind, let's now dissect how these subtle psychological shifts actually show up in those 5 specific phrases we mentioned earlier. Let's break down what I call the 5 facades. First up, I'm really busy right now. We've all heard it. The truth is, this is almost always a statement of priority. When interest is genuine and excitement is high, busyness magically disappears. People find time. So when I'm busy becomes a recurring theme, it's a signal that you're just not at the top of their emotional investment list anymore. Second, I'm not really a texter. In our hyper-connected world, this is just highly improbable. A person's phone is their emotional lifeline. This excuse points to what we can call selective engagement. If she's not texting you with energy and curiosity, it's very likely she's texting someone else who is sparking that for her. The communication with you becomes transactional, dry, and devoid of life. The third one, I need space and time. This one can feel heavy, but it's often a psychological shield, a soft way of saying, I need freedom to explore other options. Think about it. Strong, healthy attraction usually creates a desire for closeness, not distance. So this is a classic move of avoidant detachment. It allows her to soften the truth of her lost interest without a direct confrontation. Then there's the seemingly harmless one. My phone died. This is often a calculated, subtle strategy to create uncertainty and regain control. It's a form of micro-avoidance. By disappearing and reappearing with a plausible excuse, she dictates the rhythm of the connection. She's rationing her presence to keep you hopeful, but also just insecure enough. And finally, the big one. I'm not ready for anything serious. This one sounds so mature and honest, but it's often a selective rejection. What it really means is, I'm not rejecting the idea of a relationship. I'm rejecting the idea of a relationship with you. When genuine, powerful attraction exists, the concept of readiness often becomes irrelevant. People adjust their lives for what they truly want. So when you look at all 5 of these, you see a pattern. Each phrase is a tool to create emotional distance and manage the disengaging person's own discomfort, usually at the expense of your clarity. They signal a fundamental shift. You've gone from being a priority to being a convenient option, maybe even a backup plan. The recommended response, in almost every case, isn't to chase or argue or try to rationalize it. It's to recognize the underlying message and withdraw your energy, preserving your own dignity. Look, understanding these individual lines is powerful, but the real unlock comes when you see the bigger picture, when you see the deeper truths and the wider implications these patterns have on our entire approach to relationships. The collective message behind all these so-called lies offers some pretty profound insights. The most important one is the primacy of behavior over words. Words can mislead, but consistent actions reveal true intent. Another is recognizing that subtle shift from priority to placeholder and understanding that emotional bandwidth is a finite critical resource. If it's not being directed toward you, it's being directed elsewhere. But critically, these patterns also shine a light on what can be called the cycle of male denial, where men often contribute to their own distress by rationalizing inconsistent behavior, by accepting those breadcrumbs of attention and prolonging their attachment to a connection that has already faded. Understanding these deeper truths is empowering. It allows you to protect your emotional energy and your self-respect. It shifts the dynamic from one of desperate pursuit to a position of informed self-worth. which allows for much healthier decision-making in all your relationships. By recognizing these subtle forms of emotional manipulation and avoiding that trap of denial, you can reclaim control over your own emotional landscape. Now, to be fair, and this is important, we can't apply this framework like a blunt instrument. It's crucial to consider the counter-arguments. Not every single instance of "I'm busy" or "I need space" is a deceptive maneuver. Genuine life circumstances, mental health challenges, an introverted personality, or even pre-existing avoidant attachment styles can all lead to reduced communication or a need for solitude, and they might have absolutely nothing to do with a new romantic interest. The real challenge is learning to discern these legitimate needs from evasive tactics. If we over-apply this framework without considering individual context, we could end up misjudging someone with genuine needs or even prematurely ending a potentially healthy relationship. It just highlights the complexity of human communication. It's not always black and white. So, after navigating all these layers, the direct excuses, the psychological drivers, and even the important exceptions, what's the final lesson here? What's the key takeaway for building healthier, more honest connections? Well, it really boils down to a few core principles. First, actions and consistent behavioral patterns are far more reliable indicators of true interest than spoken words, which can often just be a smokescreen. Second, when interest wanes, a person will inevitably shift from being a priority to being a placeholder, and their emotional bandwidth gets redirected. And third, rationalizing inconsistent behavior and accepting those breadcrumbs of attention only prolongs emotional distress and erodes your self-respect. True empowerment comes from recognizing these patterns, prioritizing your own self-worth, and responding with dignified withdrawal rather than desperate pursuit. Ultimately, the conversation around these subtle signals isn't just about decoding a partner's words. It's about understanding the profound language of human emotional investment. It challenges us to look beyond the convenient narratives we're offered, and instead to trust the undeniable truth revealed by consistent behavior and redirected energy. The real power lies not in deciphering every riddle, but in cultivating the self-awareness and self-respect to recognize when our value is being negotiated and to choose clarity and dignity over the comfort of denial. Because in the grand calculus of connection, true love doesn't speak in riddles. It speaks in consistent, undeniable action. Thanks for watching, and if you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon so you never miss the next videos.